5. Welcome to Poetry Night here at Westminster. A rather large group of us has been meeting to hear and enjoy the work of the bards, to share our own poetry that we've written sometimes. Sometimes we're funny, sometimes we're serious, and poetry can express and survive either way. It's as old as humanity and sings all the languages of the world. We are of Poetry Night, a semi-regular group, that meets once every couple of months. At times we feature a single poet who takes up about half the time. I'm going to let Joan Mueller tell us about how this Poetry Night began and who was the one who led it. So Joan, unmute and tell us about it.
Hello, I'm Joan Mueller, and I was happy to be involved with this from the beginning. Lydia Blanchard, who's a lovely woman who lived here, in the English department at San Marcos, a respected academic, but also a wonderful friend. And we were talking amongst ourselves about poetry and how we'd like to have some go on here. So one of the things we decided to do was try a poetry night, and several other people joined in to help with the arrangements, see that the wine was delivered and to seat people and stuff. And we began almost every month for about 3 years, not quite that often. And as Monita said, it was some of the classic poets, some written by members. And there were several things, just to have it as part of our history. Some of the things were really lovely. One time, one woman, an elderly lady with a lovely alto voice, sang Tit Willow from the Mikado. And what else? Oh yes, one man came in a baseball suit to say his poem. Another time, a group of us recited the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock as a sort of a group event. And so it was quite a mix. And at times there might be 30 people there. But there were regulars who came who wanted to hear poetry, and some who would also recite it. And as I said, Monita, Lydia Blanchard was the leader, and we really respected her and loved her. And from time to time, you'll hear us recite some of her poems. In her retirement, she took up a lot of things, and writing poetry was a real passion. So I think that's all. We would come to the solarium, and it would be evening time, 7 o'clock. Sometimes we'd watch the sun go down as we're saying poems after we'd gotten our glass of wine and rearranged ourselves. When Bill and I lived in Southern California, we would have poetry nights in our living room, and this felt the same. Although there you could sit on the floor and have candlelight. But being with friends to read poems has been special. And it came about at that time. Maybe it's part of the history here at another time, but we did it for about 3 years. Really enjoyed it. That's all.
Thank you so much, Joan. We appreciate that. Lydia Blanchard also started our drama group, our reading drama, or Shakespeare particularly. She was an amazing woman. So, according to our custom, get yourself a glass of wine and sit back and enjoy our fellowship of poetry lovers. We always did that when we were upstairs in the solarium. Okay, our first poem is one that Dan Wilson chose. Unfortunately, he's not able to be here now, but Carol Dickerson is going to read it for us. So, Carol? You want me to go to the second one too? No. So the elephants I got to. Huh? No, I beg your pardon, read them both.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm a sub, and I'm subbing for Dan.
Speak up.
I'm subbing for Dan, and I'm going to read two poems that he has requested that we enjoy this afternoon. The first one is called Opossum. It's written by Elizabeth Shuley, and it's from a book, Mrs. Noah Takes the Helm. Adjusting to suburban intercession, he lived successfully, scuttling among shrubs, among curbs, scouting out grubs, tubers, and maybe the lady of his dreams. He sustained his dignity in a society prejudiced against his tail. At night, an opaque shadow, he was backlit by stars and headlights. He had been hustling gutters and satiated sauntered across asphalt. And when they aimed for him to reduce his ancient lineage, I've skipped the line here. I'm going to start back here. He had been hustling gutters and satiated, sauntered across asphalt. When they aimed for him, reducing his ancient lineage to roadkill, contemporary, anonymous. I pulled aside, stretched him out on the earth's altar to superate into glory. His fur transformed to grass, his teeth to seeds, his tail to root, bless his bones and guts. And the second poem that Dan submitted was called Mrs. Noah Ponders the Elephants. We used them. They hauled the logs. They hoisted them into place. They built the ark. We abused them. We prodded them. We thrashed them. We chained them. And then we betrayed them. We chose only to enter two in the ark. Then we kept them in the dark, listening to the lamentations of drowned. They knelt in the hold with celerity and boulders. They yearned for flowers. They mourned for forests. They leaned against each other, weeping for friends and family. They trumpeted for life everlasting. They became our lost landscape. Their griefs were ours. They were our ballast. They were our key. And those are the two poems he submitted.
I believe I'm next.
Yes, you are.
My name is Marilyn Smolinski, and I will read a short piece by Walt Whitman containing a lovely metaphor. A noiseless, patient spider. I marked where on a little promontory it stood isolated, marked how to explore the vacant, vast surrounding. It launched forth filament, filament, filament out of itself, ever unreeling them, ever tirelessly speeding them. And here comes the metaphor. And you, oh my soul, where you stand, surrounded, detached in measureless oceans of space, ceaselessly musing, venturing, throwing, seeking the spheres to connect them, till the bridge you will need be formed, till the ductile anchor hold, till the gossamer thread you fling catch somewhere, oh my soul.
Thank you. Very nice. And next we have Molly Bean, who's going to read Candlelight.
So Candlelight is by Tony Hoagland, a poet you've probably not heard of. I ran across him in The Sun magazine, which I've subscribed to for many years. He's described as that rare literary phenomenon, a critically acclaimed poet who wanted to be understood by a general audience. And the editors write in the introduction to this, Tony was a stimulating writer to work with and often receptive to our suggestions. He once commented that he must have been in denial about a dangling participle we flagged, but he would also stand his ground when it felt necessary, such as the time he sent us a poem that mentioned the death of Senator Joseph McCarthy, the notorious right-wing ideologue whose name is synonymous with the anti-communist witch hunts of the 1950s. Tony had written that McCarthy had died of mouth cancer, and after I pointed out that this wasn't true, he replied, Joseph McCarthy should have died of cancer of the mouth, and that's good enough for me. I like his poems because they're easy to understand, but he also uses language in a new and unusual way. And he ends most of his poems with some sort of an exclamation mark. Here it is, Candlelight. Crossing the porch in the hazy dusk to worship the moon rising like a yellow filling station sign on the black horizon, you feel the faint grit of ants beneath your shoes, but keep on walking because in this world you have to decide what you're willing to kill. Saving your marriage might mean dinner for two by candlelight on steak raised on pasture, chopped out of rainforest, whose absence might mean an atmospheric thinness 50 years from now above the vulnerable head of your bald grandson on vacation as the cells of his scalp, sauteed by solar radiation, break down like suspects under questioning. Still you slice the sirloin into pieces and feed each other on silver forks under the approving gaze of a waiter whose purchased attention and French name are a kind of candlelight themselves. While in the background, the fingertips of the pianist float over the tusks of the slaughtered elephant without a care, as if the elephant had granted its permission.
Thank you very much. That was good. And next we have Lexa Crane. Lexa Crane is new here. I think a lot of you haven't had a chance to meet her, but she's been here, what, 6 months, 5 months? And she has written a lot of her own poetry. Today she's going to read someone else's called Somewhere I've Never Traveled. And everything's written in lowercase, so you know who this is. Go ahead.
Are you ready for me?
Go ahead and read it now, Alexa.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I am reading an E.E. Cummings poem. Somewhere I have never traveled, gladly beyond any experience. Your eyes have their silence. In your most frail gesture are things which enclose me, though I have closed myself as fingers. You open always, petal by petal, myself, as spring opens, touching skillfully, mysteriously, her first rose. Or if your wish be to close me, I and my life will shut very beautifully, suddenly, as when the heart of this flower imagines the snow carefully descending everywhere. Nothing which we are to perceive in this world equals the power of your intense fertility, whose texture compels me with the color of its countries, rendering death and forever with each breathing. I do not know what it is about you that closes and opens. Only something in me understands the voice of your eyes is deeper than all roses. Nobody, not even the rain, has such small hands. And that last line, to me, screams, this is a love poem. And my poet E. Cummings, I first discovered when I was 16, as all teenage girls were looking for people to tell them about love. And I was attracted to E. Cummings' work because he does not use capital letters. He seldom uses commas or periods or lets you know how to read it. His lyricism and choice of words amaze and challenge me. The end.
Thank you so much, Lexa. It's nice to have you with us. Okay, next we have Lori Humphreys. And she's going to
Yeah,
tell you,
Lex and I had to change chairs.
yeah. She is going to tell us about her crepe myrtle.
Yes, this is my own poem. And on one level, it is about the crepe myrtle tree outside my apartment window. On another, it is about loss, a reality with which we are all familiar. My crepe myrtle. I think of the crepe myrtle outside my window as mine, a solace, a refuge. I enjoy the mock wildness of the carnival pink sponge sugar blooms atop the slender branches, wind strong, knocking against my window, requesting entry. Though many times this year it was I who sought permission to live in the comforting cradle of the silken bark branches amid the boisterous blooms, to join the squirrels and sparrows. A tree home, a soothing fantasy. There is another view of my crepe myrtle abroad. The crepe myrtle is too tall, too close to the windows, should be trimmed, unsafe, perhaps. But I would miss the hurly-burly embrace of tossing branches and blooms, causing the morning light to dapple the wing chairs. The intimate view of feathers and fur, a rainbow of brown, black, and gray. I would miss the white-tailed mourning dove's black, lidless eyes, meeting mine through the glass window, inquiring, so, who is in the zoo? Is it Native Americans who said, we only borrow the land for a while, then leave it? I must remember, my crepe myrtle is only on loan.
Thank you very much. That was good. And I've seen that crepe myrtle. Jeff, would you care to unmute and read your poem? He has a collection of small poems, haiku and tanka, which I do not know. We're ready. Unmute. Jeff, unmute. We can't hear you. Unmute.
All right.
Yeah, good.
Okay. The way this came about was I have sort of recently taken up writing poetry as something I did a long time ago, like in high school. And so I'm coming back to it. And so I've been writing things that are mostly sort of formal experiments in the possibilities. So I took up the idea of the haiku, which is a poem made of 31 syllables, 3 lines, 5, 7, 5. And then there's the tanka, which is 5, 7, 5, 7, 7. And so I've got a couple of examples of those. And then the last item on this sheet is a medley of the different forms. So I'll just read through them, I guess, and see how it goes. Cut down the dead elms, then plant the red oak instead. Something to wait for. The storage surge crashes against the coastal village where once we sheltered. Just as then, it rains and rains and sweeps the shoreline away. On the Delhi road, I saw an entire family on one motorbike. Father, mother, children, and an oblivious sleeping baby. When I was quite young, I thought that mountains floated in the sky. I saw the mountain's snow-capped peak above the city's gray haze, and the foothills were obscured, and the mountain seemed to rest on nothing.
Thank you. Lovely. In Indonesia, I remember seeing whole families on a motorcycle, so I really related to that. Okay, our next one is going to be Joyce Wilson, and Ken is going to read her poem that she borrowed from, let's see, who was it? I don't know. Did you read that?
Yes, and this is called, the name of this poem by Joyce Wilson is called 5 a.m. in the Pine Woods. I'd seen their hoof prints in the deep needles and knew they ended the long night under the pines, walking like two mute and beautiful women toward the deeper woods. So I got up in the dark and went there. They came slowly down the hill and looked at me sitting under the blue trees. Shyly, they stepped closer and stared under their thick lashes and even nibbled some damp tassels of weed. This is not a poem about a dream, though it could be. This is a poem about the world that is ours, or could be. Finally, one of them, I swear it, could have come to my arms, but the other stamped sharp hoof in the pine needles like the tap of sanity, and they went off together through the trees. When I woke, I was alone. I was thinking, so this is how you swim inward. So this is how you flow outward. So this is how you pray.
I don't have the name of the writer of that, but it's very thought-provoking, isn't it?
Yes.
I appreciate your reading, and at the last minute, that was wonderful. Okay, next we have Ann Chris with her poem, Tears.
Okay. This is the poem I wrote I belong to a small group locally here in Austin that is working on the human rights of the Palestinians. The name of this poem, which I wrote, is called Tears. To record what I saw, stand tall. Why war is bad, unutterably sad. Norwegian filmmakers show so the public knows. Inhumane is the name of the game of war, particularly when children are hit by bits of metal. What's best about war is kindness soars juxtaposed to the cruel. These opposites grew in tears of Gaza. The appeal of war are its extremes, valor and hate, the resilient and the dead, make the bed where we lie. People of earth, forget dearth, learn to share. And what is the gain? An intact world with very less pain.
Thank you. That's very, very moving. It's something we need to hear. Okay, our next one is Domula. And she's going to read Thanks. This is a very, very Buddhistic poem. I like it. Go ahead.
This is by W.S. Merwin, and I had not heard of him, but I'll tell you something about him. He's one of the most highly decorated poets in the United States, maybe in the world, very prolific. He died when he was 91, and he'd been writing and changing and growing all his life. The LA Times in 2007 wrote about him and said he was post-Presbyterian Zen poet and a channeler of ancient paradoxes. He garnered many awards, the young Yale poet in 1952, the Pulitzer more than once, the National Book Award, and the inaugural Tanning Prize. In his late years, he lived on Maui on a rundown pineapple plantation, which he and his third wife reclaimed. He reintroduced 500 species of palms varieties. He'd gone to Hawaii to study with a noted Zen priest, Robert Aiken. He was a conservationist and lived in blissful solitude. He didn't answer his telephone in Hawaii. It's recommended that you read his later poems slowly, but the one I'm going to read is, I think, fairly late, and it's not going to be read slowly. If I can find it, that is. Where did it go? That would be fine if I couldn't find it. Okay, it's called Listen. Listen, with the night falling, we are saying thank you. We are stopping on the bridges to bow from the railings. We are running out of the glass rooms with our mouths full of food to look at the sky and say thank you. We are standing by the water, thanking it, smiling by the windows, looking out in our directions. Back from a series of hospitals, back from a mugging. After funerals, we are saying thank you. After the news of the dead, whether or not we knew them, we are saying thank you. Over telephones, we are saying thank you in doorways and in the backs of cars and in elevators, remembering wars and the police at the door, and the beating on stairs, we are saying thank you. In the banks, we are saying thank you in the faces of the officials and the rich and all who will never change. We go on saying thank you, thank you. With the animals dying around us, our lost feelings, we are saying thank you. With the forest falling faster than the minutes of our lives, we are saying thank you. With the words going out like cells of a brain, with the cities growing over us, with nobody listening, we are saying thank you. We are saying thank you and waving. dark though it is.
That's very, very moving. And if I may make a comment, it reflects the idea of we are not everything there is. We need to think of the whole. We're not the center of the universe. Okay, the last poem we're going to have is one I wrote, and it's not a beautiful poem, but I just wanted to express my feeling. Jack and I had been up to Nebraska for the solar eclipse. We didn't see the solar eclipse, the clouds ruled it out. But anyway, on our way back, we stopped in Ponca City, Oklahoma. And I forget why, but Jack just thought that'd be fun. So we went there. And one of the things that they had in Ponca City was this statue. And so I wrote this poem about it. And you have some notes here that tell you when it was built and who built it and so forth. Her shoulders confidently back, her feet solidly proceeding, her eyes on an image far away, one hand enfolding her child's, her other cradling a Bible, often forgotten in the dusty history books, old and current, the pioneer woman. She never wanted to go, to leave her old village, but she went and created home, neighborhood, survival. I had just read a bunch of stuff from history about our pioneer mothers and fathers. And I'm so thankful for our mothers. I don't think any of them really wanted to go. And some of them raised hell about it for a while, but finally went anyway. And they did bring a certain softness, a certain community that became our West, or the middle part of our country. Also in Ponca City, we found this great big rich, our great big rich, huge house. And it had been turned into a museum for Indian culture, the American Indian. And we found it fascinating. And one thing I have, and you don't have on your perhaps copy, but our friends who hear this program will, what is life? Just 3 lines. It's a flash of a it's the flash of a firefly in the night. It's the breath of a buffalo in winter. It's a little shadow that runs across the grass and loses itself in the sunset. And this was written by the Blackfoot Indians, and I thought it was very profound. That is it. We're going to have another poetry reading night on November the 23rd. And so if you or anybody in our broader audience want to contribute a poem, let me know. We'd love to have it. We'd like to have variety. And we look forward to seeing you next month, November the 23rd. Goodbye.